Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's winter up here in Boston, and we're surrounded by cold weather and snow. And in fact, that's going to be our theme for the next few weeks. We're painting a scene today that is kind of a simple view of a field, some trees, and sky. This is the photo that we're using as a source. But you can see it's not so interesting. It's a little bland, so we're going to try to do a few things to make it a little more energetic. However, I want to start this exercise, this series, with a tonal study. And a tonal study means I'm working with one color. In this case, I'm working with a black or with a neutral tint. And I'm trying to simplify the values, the lights and darks that I intend to use in my painting. It's a great way to warm up if you haven't painted for a while, or even if you're just starting a new session. Working with a single color eliminates a lot of the decisions that you have to make when you're painting, and you can focus more of your attention on lights and darks, which in the long run will benefit your painting. So I've finished up the sky area. You can see one difference that I've made already is in the design or the composition. I've lowered the horizon much lower than it was in the photograph because it was a little too much in the center. It was dividing the painting in half. So here I've focused more on the sky and made the sky larger. It's taking up more space, and I can play with that space. I can put more clouds or more changes into it. The second application was to represent some shadows moving across some new fallen snow. And I'm working wet on wet here, so I need to work fast because the paper's drying as I'm painting, and I would like to capture some soft edges and some lost and found edges. You can see that happening in the trees above. There's some edges that are disappearing almost completely into the sky. Others are finding a dry patch of the paper and giving a nice sharp edge. This is what we call lost and found edges. And I've used a strong midtone to represent the trees, and now even a stronger dark to represent some of the shadows under the trees. So I feel I've essentialized the tonal values to 4 in this painting using the white of the paper, a lot of midtones in the sky and snow, dark midtone into the trees, and some accents of the strong darks in the shadows. A lot of you have asked to see my palette. This is what it looks like. I'm ready to go. I've mixed up a puddle of yellow ochre, burnt sienna, and cobalt blue. I'm going to be mixing the colors on the paper and not on the palette, so I kind of pre-mix everything just to be ready because, again, working wet into wet. And I'm starting with water. It's a dry day, and I want to have time for these colors to mix smoothly. I'm using a big brush and wetting the paper. You can see it's shiny. And I get started with just placing a couple colors. I'm going to start with a bit of yellow ochre, and not too fussy, just putting some color in there. And then I'm going to add a little bit of that burnt sienna, which has a lot of red, and it'll dry as a sort of pinkish color in the final painting. And it's still quite wet. Now I'm going to introduce that cobalt blue. And the cobalt blue, I've got my board at a bit of a tilt so that you can see it's running down. And it's going to run over the colors. However, you'll see in the finished work that these light applications of yellow and red come through the blue and give a beautiful translucency to the sky. This is one strength of transparent watercolor that we try to utilize in almost every painting. That is the transparent nature and these sort of subtle, quiet mixtures. Well, as I'm talking, I've zapped in all those trees with the pure burnt sienna, again working into a wet sky, So look at the edges where there's a little white on the left, the edge is sharp, where the burnt sienna is applied into a very wet blue, it softens out, becomes very mysterious. Lost and found edges. While it's wet, I'm using the opportunity to strengthen just a few areas along the ground where the trees or the bushes meet the snow, and put in some stronger touches of burnt sienna. These will dissolve into the burnt sienna, but will remain as strong touches. You saw my brush just gliding past moments ago. This was with water. I'm very keen on getting a soft edge to these shadows, so I start with water and then again a little bit of yellow and a little bit of that burnt sienna before following it with a stronger blue this time. I want a deeper version of that cobalt blue in my cast shadows. And you see I'm getting some soft edges where the snow is coming down. The shadow's coming down across the snow. And look at how that warm color is coming out now from behind the blue. It gives the feeling of a little bit of warmth in the sky, makes the blue feel a little more translucent. And after putting in that shadow, these whites that are left are really acting as a focal point. They're pulling your eye towards that stand of trees that's slightly left center. And the blues that I'm adding now are intended as sort of shadow colors, and also meant to make this a stand of trees in that left center a little more obvious, with a little more punch. But everything that's being added is very quiet and muted. That's the nature of this painting, or maybe the essence of this painting, is these sort of soft transitions, soft light, soft shadows. Even in the trees, there's a lot of softness, and I want to maintain that. This is basically the painting. I'm not going to do much more. And an exercise in using wet-on-wet technique.